it's wet, and in places it is growing mushrooms and mold.
Life is a winding road, no telling where it goes. Driving through days and nights, won't stop for traffic lights. And I really wanna know if I'll ever figure out where the road goes. Even if I'm falling down, I will keep on searching for my highs. You can say I lost my mind.
These last couple of weeks we have continued to work on getting the barn cleaned out and getting the stalls completely cleared of all the stuff that was stacked in them, and the basic rough cleaning and discovering how it's even really built, because we couldn't really even get to the walls before. So like any project, as soon as you dig in, it creates more projects. We've been investigating and finding a few different things. First of all, there's a lot of stuff stacked in those stalls, and a lot of it is actually useful. It wasn't mostly garbage, so while there was some things to throw away, mostly it was a lot of things that I now have to find another place to store. We've come up with a couple solutions for a couple different things, and some of them I'm still just not sure where to put, but we're working on that. Also, as we're checking out the structure and investigating what it really entails, we're finding where our pain points are going to be, what things do we need to actually repair, what things do we just want to change, what things just need to be cleaned up. So in the stalls, we've discovered that the floor is dirt. I'm considering replacing the dirt floor with something else, and I don't know what yet. Mostly just to keep rodents from burrowing in. So I have a lot more research to do on that. If you have any advice on that, I would like to hear it, because I have a lot of research to do, because pretty soon here we have to make a decision, at least on the one stall. That was one thing we discovered, is floors are currently dirt floors. The second thing is the dividers between the three stalls. Those walls don't go all the way to the floor. They only go all the way to the foundation. The top of the foundation is higher than the top of the floor. So in order to keep things from going between stalls, I'm going to have to come up with a solution to either extend the walls down to the floor or put some sort of wire mesh, concrete blocks or something to block that off. And when we were investigating everything that was already in place in the stalls, we found that at least one of them so far has a light mounted on the ceiling. In the process of investigating how that one was strung up, we traced it back to a outlet and realized that from that outlet several cords went in different directions, and one of them went upstairs to the hayloft. So my husband traced it upstairs to see where it was going and make sure it wasn't actually plugged into anything. And when he got upstairs, he realized the roof has failed. The entire underside of the barn roof is wet, at least damp, in some places very wet, and growing mushrooms, in some places mold, and from what we can tell, it's just the roof is just that old, and so when it failed, it just failed. So that means probably we're going to have to replace the roof. So we did have a contractor come out and look at it, and he agreed it's just old. It was not improperly built or anything. It's just old. It's at its limit and it's failing. It needs to be replaced. Right now it has, I believe it's asphalt shingles. Plywood sheeting also needs replaced, and just the whole thing has to be replaced. So I think what we're actually going to do, depending on how the estimate comes back, is probably just replace it this summer with a metal roof, and then we don't have to think about it again. Brand new sheeting underneath and a metal roof. And that will also allow us to collect rainwater off of the barn, because it's a sizable roof, and it will be just running over metal, not asphalt or anything else that has chemicals in it. So I feel a little bit better about using that water to feed animals or to water a garden or anything like that. So we're waiting on an estimate. Hopefully we'll get that estimate today. Other things that we have found in the barn that we want to save, but they don't fit in the barn right now. In the stalls, we found a couple of rain catchment barrels that were not hooked up to anything, just sitting in stalls. And there were racks, hay feeder racks that attached to the walls, but they were not attached, they're just sitting in the stall. There was a lot of chicken keeping equipment. There were feed pans and watering buckets, some horse gear, like I have sleigh bells and harnesses and things. There's an old table, there's an old trunk, a metal trash can, and then we had to put ourselves in there all of the salvageable chain link fence that we took down from existing dog kennels that were on the property that were in our way. So that's what behind me we ended up putting here. So this behind me, and you can't see it very well because we stacked some of that fencing up in front of it. This is the dog kennel on our property that's attached to our dog yard, and we hadn't been using it because the kennel part because it needed to be cleaned out. The ground has horse mats and bricks and a variety of things in it, and it was growing up with Creeping Charlie, and it just needs to be cleaned out, and there's some repairs need to be made to it before it could be used for dogs. Because it was essentially empty, we decided to put a tarp over the top because it had curved bars over the top for some sort of a top anyway, and we just zip tied it on, and we moved all of the salvageable things that we could that made sense, that could be outside as long as they weren't getting directly wet, into this large kennel space here as a temporary measure until we can either utilize those things or find a better place to store them. There's giant pieces of tree trunk. I can't really call them logs. I guess they're logs. If you stand them on end, they stand as high as my hip, and they're, gosh, I don't know, as much as 18 inches across. They're large. Our property's mostly wooded, and it's mostly wooded with Douglas fir and big leaf maple. And these, I believe, are Douglas fir. And some of the trees on our property have gotten quite large. And at one point in time, this property was properly managed, which meant sometimes you have to take down the really big trees because they're starting to die and they can cause a lot of damage if they fall. And I think that's what these were from, and probably saved to use as firewood. I don't know why else you would put them inside the barn. I don't know why they weren't split up, but they're big giant logs. So there's a couple of them that are wide enough that I would like my son to take the chainsaw and take a couple slices off to use as like tabletops for end tables or stools or something. And there are a couple that we may cut to an appropriate height to be just like a stool around a fire pit. But I'm not sure what to do with the rest, if we should just split it up and use for firewood. Right now we have them sitting outside beside the barn. I don't know where else to put them. Some of them could be a goat playground someday, I don't know, but right now that's where they're sitting. I've probably mentioned a couple of times, just in this video even, about wanting to make sure that the chicken coop stall in particular is very predator proof. If you haven't followed our channel for very long, you might not know, but we've already found a bat in here, an owl, neighborhood cats sleep in here every night, and we've not found in the barn, but kind of all around it. There have been a variety of snakes, all garter snakes so far. I don't want any of them in my barn, and we have recently found, and while we're cleaning out the stalls, I think our count is up to 5 dead rats and 1 dead mouse, which is understandable because when we first started cleaning the barn, one of the first things we found was a bag of rat poison. So we know that they're here and have been a nuisance in the barn. I want to find ways as much as possible to keep my chickens safe from any kind of disease, and the eggs safe from being stolen, and the people who care for the animals safe from disease or bites or anything, being surprised by random animals. I'm sure that I look like a naive farmer. That's because I am. Some of this stuff is going to be unavoidable, I know that, but I still want to do my very best to make sure that the animals I keep are happy and healthy, and the people who keep them, myself and my family, also remain happy and healthy. That's all I have for you today. Thanks for joining us on the homestead. We'll see you on the next video.
You can say I lost my mind, I will keep on holding my head high, even if the sky is falling down.